Hello, thanks for joining me for your June monthly horoscope for the Sun or the Ascendant. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. Every time I drop a video, you'll get an alert. Also, if you'd like to ascend above your zodiac sign forecast and embrace more serious astrology, check out my very special offer. A character analysis and a 12-month forecast, 30% off, will give you searing insights into your future prospects and also help you to understand what makes you tick at a deeper level. This is based on your time, date and place of birth and is totally unique to you. No two charts are the same. Please see the link below for more. Hello Cancer and welcome to your in-depth monthly horoscope for June. Now as this month begins, the Sun, Mercury, Venus and the North Node are all gathered in your 12th house of reflection. The 12th house is very much about the shadow side of life. It's not so perceptible, it's not so tangible, but it's very powerful. So it's about our instincts, it's about spirituality, and sometimes it can be about just retreating a little bit from others to give ourselves the space to gather our thoughts, ready for when the Sun roars into our own sign, as it does this month for you on the 20th, and then that helps to get us back on the front foot. But this month brings rewards for you long before the 20th. So although Mercury, it has to be said, is in retrograde in your 12th house as this month begins, which can be quite complex because it's asking you to think very, very carefully, because Mercury is about thought, it's about expression, but think very carefully about some of the more sensitive strands or even perhaps some of the most tender areas of your past history. But in the first week, Mercury is squaring with Neptune. Now Neptune, for you, is in a great location, the 9th house, and since 2012, therefore, has been encouraging you to expand your reach, to travel more, to heighten your frequency, if you like, in terms of healing and knowledge. And if you're really into music or performance or the arts, all these areas have probably done very well too. But when Mercury and Neptune, particularly with Mercury in a retrograde, tangle, what we can get is almost an amplification of the sensitivity, because that Mercury in the 12th house is seeing you turn a little inward, and Neptune can distort. So if you have conversations in the first week of this month, there could be some very salient things that could come up, but it might not be necessarily so easy to process them. So as long as you are bracing yourself for that, that's a great thing, because we do actually have a terrific link between the Sun in your 12th house and also Saturn, also in the first week. Now Saturn, of course, has got a bad reputation, but he just gives us lots of discipline, and at the moment he's asking you to grapple with shared resources, anything to do with business or finance. It can be to do where we're most invested emotionally, so a very intimate relationship or even a business tie. And so the Sun in your 12th house here with Saturn is asking you to delve down, to try to understand the reason for some things, make sense of it, and actually own it. Because if we are able to do that with the Sun in such a tender area, but with the discipline of Saturn, that can give us the platform to move forwards. But also, Venus, the planet of love and attraction, arrives in your sign on the 2nd. And that's a really significant development, because it's going to see you this month drawing new energy to you. So if you have been going through some thinking around about a separation, a past love, or there has been a recent breakdown in a relationship, I think Venus moving into your sign brings you to some degree into the present, even though those other influences are still very reflective. But also in the first 10 days of this month, Mars in your sign not at its best in Cancer, but it's in a very warlike opposition with Pluto. And this means that if there is something that you feel isn't working in your situation, there is someone who's not being very sincere, or you feel someone is in some way being disloyal, or there is even as strong a word as betrayal in your situation, Mars in its opposition with Pluto can see you adopt a much more powerful response and stance. But the trick here, quite honestly, Cancer, is to not overdo any reactions, because I do feel that you could be feeling quite vulnerable as this month begins, and therefore the angle between Mars and Pluto could see you take on a challenge, push someone back, be mega assertive in order to protect your position, but you may be coming more from a position of weakness than you realise because of the distortion that Mercury and Neptune in a right angle can create. So I would say use your power and your authority very carefully, and then you can assess which situations really require a very strong response and which are better to be processed under the kind of view that we can't please all of the people all of the time. Some people may disappoint us. We might need to let them go. You usually avoid confrontation, but I think you could surprise yourself a lot in the first 10 days of this month. So if you do go into inverted commas battle, it's vital you pick those battles very carefully. Otherwise you could find that you do take the proverbial sledgehammer to the nuts when it's not really required. So just watch that you're not reacting to a situation. But I do think it's true that you will be processing some parts of your past or some relationships that don't perhaps meet your expectation, and it could all feel very raw indeed. However, on the 10th, there is an annular solar eclipse, and this provides a backdrop of energy for the next 6 months. But that too is going to be angling in a right angle to Neptune. So there's potential to, I don't want to use the word exaggerate, because as I said before, Cancer people generally will do anything to avoid a confrontation. Generally, your way of reacting to challenges is to withdraw, to go left, to go right, withdraw. But you are a cardinal sign. That means you are a sign of leadership. There's only 4, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So for you to retreat at all times or go sideways is not viable. So you know that sometimes you will step forwards and of course give someone a bite with your mighty nippers. And I just think over the next 6 months, the eclipse is asking you to keep working at any part of your nature that's not quite integrated. Just because you're ruled by the moon and you can be very caring and can be very protective, that doesn't mean to say there's not other parts of your nature that may not be working quite as integratedly as they could do. I mean, one of the things that does define Cancer people, I think, is control. And if someone pushes back on your desire for control, then that could be a surprise. It could be a bit of a shock, and it may feel really tough to take. But this is all helping you to get more in touch with your deeper spiritual truth and to come to terms with some parts of your nature that perhaps aren't quite as milk and honey, that aren't quite as neat and tidy. Maybe there are past dramas or past actions that you're not quite so happy with, and this is your opportunity to come to peace with them. But on the 11th, Mars moves out of your sign and into the sign of Leo. Now, Mars loves being in Leo because Mars governs the sign of Aries, which is also a fire sign. So Mars here is quite dynamic, and this can give you an immediate desire to improve your financial lot. Now, on the 14th, Saturn and Uranus, which have been broadly in conflict since the second week of January, come to an exact square. And I don't necessarily think that day will define the challenge for you alone, because I think it's been ongoing for us all. We've seen a lot of people protesting this year. So we could say that Saturn represents the orthodoxy, but in the sign of the people, which is Aquarius, it's much more outspoken than it was in the sign of Capricorn, which is the management. So even though Saturn governs both sides in a slightly different way. Now Uranus is in its full in the sign of Taurus, but for you it's about your future, and it's about shaking things up, making it more alive, really feeling that you're associating with people that stimulate and stimulate you, and also push you and challenge you in some ways that you actually enjoy. So maybe there has been some growth going on with this particular right angle, but Saturn's in your sector of long-term finances. Uranus is in your sector of idealism, philosophy and friendship. If there are any friends or groups of friends that aren't working well for you, this month is going to reveal it. But on the 20th, the sun moves into your sign, and you're really going to feel much more energized, and some of the insecurity that may have been washing around earlier in the month can start to just come away from you. And in fact, the sun angles superbly in the following week with Jupiter, the planet of growth, which goes retrograde on the same day on the 20th, but it's in your sector of travel. And if you are someone who really does love jetting around, or you're quite adventurous, or you like to push yourself in terms of learning knowledge, perhaps through higher education of some kind, you're going to be much more dynamic in that week from the 20th. It's going to be an exciting time for you. On the 22nd, Mercury ends its retrograde, but it doesn't end its shadow. That doesn't happen until the 26th. It won't be until then that some of those more tender strands that have been very active really start to ease away. And on the 24th, there is a full moon, and it opposes the sun in your sign. Now, the moon in Capricorn is not at its best. It's in detriment, but it is actually forging a really helpful sextile to Jupiter, and the sun in your sign is forging a trine still. So as full moons go, this is a pretty good one. And I think for you, it is a challenge to your desire to focus on what's right for you, the individual. So somebody could challenge you a little bit and say, yeah, well, we know you want to do that, and that's great, and it's brilliant what you're doing, but are you so focused on that that you're not actually staying aware of what's going on with us? So there could be some of those kind of conversations that go on in the next couple of weeks after that full moon. The 25th sees Neptune go into a retrograde. Because you've got Jupiter and Neptune retrograde now in your sector of travel, I think there is going to be an opportunity for a lot of people to get away. But I also feel that by the time that Jupiter goes back into Aquarius on the 28th of July, the chances are that some kind of lockdown, perhaps not a full lockdown, perhaps a more modified way of moving around in the world might come to pass. So, but I do feel that your desire is going to be to get away from it all big time. Also in week 3, Venus in your sign forges an opposition with Pluto. This could see you draw someone new to you, you know. If you're looking for a new relationship, this gives you a fantastic amount of pull-in power. The thing with Venus and Pluto in the 8th harmonic, so that's when it's a conjunction, square or opposition, is that it can provide leverage. And so this is where people lay on the charm with a trowel. And it can be because they really fancy you and they basically want to ravish you, or it could be because they want you to come and work for their company and they're promising you the earth, but it doesn't quite transpire as you're told. So be careful what's negotiated with that particular influence, but something rather nice can come from it. That's undeniable. Now, from the 26th to the 30th, Mars is in opposition with Saturn. So if you're wanting to spend some money across those days and you are in a close relationship and you have a different vision of expenditure, there's every chance you're going to have an argument. I can only be honest about it. If you're looking to raise money for a business, you're more entrepreneurial, you might not get the responses you want. Saturn is the brake. Mars is the accelerator. The sun is the car itself. And if Mars is inhibited anyway, it creates frustration. And it's also possible this frustration could be to do with a romantic relationship. Perhaps if one of you is more attracted to the other person and it's not reciprocated, then that can cause a degree of disappointment and irritation. But generally, this month is going to see you come into your power more as the month goes on. But you could feel really surprisingly tender, even vulnerable at the start of it. But I think the solar eclipse gives you a glorious opportunity to try to clear up any outstanding strands. It could be right back into your childhood. You know, they say in therapy that we're given mother or father's little messages, and those shape our personalities. Now, some people continue to grow and take a great interest in personal development. Other people kind of accept the way they were molded, and it was pretty good, and they just, sort of go on in life and it all seems to work okay. It depends on your experience, but if there have been upsets, disappointments, separations, breakdowns in relationships, you've suffered with depression or sadness over situations, own it and honour it and salute it, and you will absolutely flourish over the next 6 months.